The film opens with a king bravely or foolishly chasing a dragon into its cave with his soldiers. As they march deeper, the king keeps staring intently at something, probably wondering why he even came in the first place. Suddenly, the dragon attacks, breathing fire and wiping out his soldiers one by one. Who needs battle tactics when you have overconfidence, right? Left alone, the king does the only thing left. He begs the dragon for his life. Guess he traded his crown for some coward points. The scene ends there, and we jump forward centuries into a new kingdom. This new kingdom is poor, its people starving. Enter Elodie, the princess of this struggling land. Her father is overjoyed when a marriage proposal comes from a wealthy prince. He's convinced this marriage will save their kingdom. Elodie agrees to the match, but reluctantly, knowing it's more about saving her people than love. Because nothing says happily ever after like financial desperation. As part of the marriage arrangements, Elodie and her family travel to the prince's kingdom. On the way, they spot dragons during a sea storm. You know, the usual scenic detour when traveling for an arranged marriage. Despite the ominous signs, they arrive safely at the prince's grand palace, which is much bigger than Elodie's modest castle. Her inner voice probably went, "Wow, so this is what indoor plumbing looks like." A royal servant welcomes them and shows them to their rooms. That night, Elodie steps out onto the balcony and notices fire in the distant mountains. Typical red flag, but hey, who has time to investigate when you're about to marry a rich prince? The next morning, the queen formally agrees to the marriage, saying the ceremony will take place the next day. While discussing wedding plans, Elodie and the prince have their first conversation. She asks him if he's being forced into the marriage. He says no, and calls her beautiful. Smooth, but we all know he's just ticking boxes for his mom. While chatting, they reach a hill overlooking the fiery mountains. Elodie mentions the flames, and the prince explains that the mountains are significant. They house a cave where ancient rituals will take place on their wedding day. Nothing says romance like a spooky cave, right? Meanwhile, Elodie's dad seems uneasy after meeting the queen. When her mom asks him what's wrong, he brushes her off. Her mom, not one to sit quietly, decides to confront the queen herself. But the queen, dripping with arrogance, refuses to talk to her, mocking her as someone from a small kingdom. Big attitude for someone hiding a dragon problem. Elodie's mom senses trouble brewing and shares her concerns with her daughters. But her husband quickly steps in to take her away, clearly trying to keep something hidden. The wedding day arrives, and Elodie, now married to the prince, is taken to the fiery mountains for the so-called rituals. They enter a cave where the kingdom's people are waiting. The queen finally reveals the truth. A dragon lives in this cave, one that caused massive destruction in their kingdom a century ago. Their king, unable to defeat it, made a desperate deal to save his life. He promised the dragon his 3 daughters. Since then, this ritual has continued to keep the dragon at bay. So, basically, the king's master plan was sacrifice my kids and hope for the best. Parenting at its finest. As part of the ritual, the queen cuts both Elodie's and the prince's hands, joining them together. She declares that they are now one. One big dragon snack, apparently. The story picks up with the prince dramatically carrying Elodie in his arms. Elodie felt a mix of emotions, embarrassment, happiness, and a pinch of awkwardness. After all, who wouldn't feel a little weird being treated like a sack of potatoes? But her happiness didn't last long. In the blink of an eye, the prince tossed her into a deep pit like yesterday's leftovers. Chivalry? Never heard of it. Elodie fainted from the fall, and when she woke up, she started shouting for help. Her cries echoed through the pit, waking up a sleeping dragon. Because why scream for help when you can summon a little fire-breathing death machine? Realizing no one was coming to save her, Elodie tried to climb out of the pit, but it was so slippery that she kept sliding down like a bad slapstick routine. As she struggled, Elodie noticed random items from previous victims scattered around. It was basically a welcome to your doom yard sale. Suddenly, she saw fire in the air and realized the dragon was awake and not in the best mood. The dragon spotted her and asked, "What's your name?" After Elodie nervously introduced herself, the dragon declared, "You're here because of a deal. And now, I'm going to kill you because I can smell your royal blood." Talk about an introduction. This dragon really knows how to break the ice. Before the dragon could roast her, literally, Elodie bolted. The dragon unleashed its fire breath, scorching everything in its path. Elodie managed to find a small cave for shelter, but not before the flames burned her foot badly. She ripped part of her dress to bandage the wound. Fashion tip: who needs couture when you can have survival chic? Despite the pain, she knew she had to keep moving. While exploring, she noticed a faint blue glow in the distance. She followed it and found it coming from a mysterious tree. But between her and the tree was a massive pit, with a dragon on her tail. Elodie had no choice. She jumped. One misstep almost sent her tumbling into the pit, but she managed to save herself by stabbing her knife into the wall. Good thing she was carrying that knife and not, say, a hairbrush. When Elodie reached the glowing tree, she discovered it was covered in tiny glowing insects. Thinking fast, she tore more of her dress to fashion a makeshift pouch, collecting the insects to use as a lamp. At this rate, she'll have no dress left by the time she escapes. Further ahead, she stumbled upon a small waterfall. Elodie leaned in to drink the water, but just as she felt relief, the dragon attacked again. She sprinted away, narrowly avoiding another fiery death. Elodie found another cave to hide in. The dragon taunted her from outside, saying, "How long will you keep running? Sooner or later, you will come to me." Inside the cave, Elodie noticed carvings of names on the walls, likely victims who had been sacrificed before her. Exhausted and emotionally drained, she collapsed and fell asleep. When she woke up, she found the glowing insect she had collected sitting on her wound. At first, she panicked, but to her amazement, her burn was completely healed. Who needs a first aid kit when you have magical bug doctors? Realizing the insects were helpful, she continued her journey, now feeling a glimmer of hope. Not far ahead, she discovered a small stone with a map etched into it, showing a way out. Following the map, she climbed through treacherous paths filled with sharp rocks. Each step was agonizing, but Elodie refused to give up. At this point, she's not just surviving. She's auditioning for the next season of Toughest Human Alive. After what felt like an eternity, she finally reached the top of the mountain. But as she looked around, she realized there was no safe way down. Elodie sat crying, high on the mountain, overwhelmed and hopeless. She wanted to scream at someone, anyone, but who would hear her from this height? Honestly, at this point, yelling at a rock might have been a solid option. As she sat there, she suddenly heard the sound of horses galloping nearby. But before she could make sense of it, the dragon appeared. Again, before the fiery beast could roast her, Elodie scrambled into a cave for safety. The dragon followed her, growling, "No matter how much you run, no one has ever escaped me. I'll catch you sooner or later." Big talk for someone who just got outmaneuvered by a girl with zero survival training. Just as Elodie was bracing herself for another round of terror, she heard her dad's voice calling her from below the cave. The dragon heard it too and zoomed down to investigate. Seizing the chance, Elodie carefully climbed down toward her father. Along the way, she stumbled upon heaps of gold and, disturbingly, 3 broken dragon eggs. It suddenly clicked. The story the queen told her wasn't entirely true. The dragon wasn't attacking because it was evil. It was taking revenge for its babies, which had been killed by the king years ago. Plot twist. Turns out the humans were the villains all along. Classic move. The scene shifted to the past, showing the king groveling before the dragon. The dragon, with no mercy, said, "I want to see you suffer. From now on, I demand 3 children from each generation of your family. Sacrifice them, and I'll spare your kingdom." This dragon is running a ruthless subscription service, family misery included. Back in the present, Elodie's father was still shouting her name, desperate to save her. When the dragon confronted him, he boldly declared, "I've come to take my daughter back, even if it means fighting you. Sir, you're brave, but also wildly out of your weight class." The dragon smirked and said, "Call your daughter." But her father shouted instead, "Elodie, wherever you are, don't come here." This angered the dragon, and in one swift move, it drove a claw into his chest. Watching her father die before her eyes, Elodie let out a piercing scream, which distracted the dragon for a moment. As the dragon searched for her, Elodie rushed to her father's side. His final words were, "I'm dying because of my sins, but you must live. Your mother and sister are waiting for you on the ship. Go!" And with that, he passed away. Heartbroken but determined, Elodie climbed back up the chain they had used to descend earlier. The dragon spotted her and started firing blasts of flames, but Elodie dodged them all, narrowly escaping the cave. Once outside, she found her father's horse and galloped away as fast as she could. The dragon, furious, pursued her, spewing fire. Elodie cleverly leaped off the horse and hid in the mountains. Enraged, the dragon torched the horse instead. R.I.P. to the real MVP, the horse, who didn't sign up for this mess. Meanwhile, back at the palace, the queen was watching all this unfold from a distance. Furious, she blamed everything on Elodie. "This is all her fault, and I'll fix it," she snarled. On the ship, Elodie's sister was watching the fiery chaos in the mountains. Suddenly, the queen stormed aboard and kidnapped her. Her twisted plan? Offer Elodie's sister to the dragon, instead of Elodie to save the kingdom. Queen or villain? Hard to tell at this point. When Elodie's mother tried to intervene and protect her daughter, the queen stabbed her without hesitation. Apparently, this queen skipped all the lessons on basic human decency. The scene ended with the queen sailing off, her cruel plan in motion, leaving a trail of devastation in her wake. The next day, Elodie returned to her ship and found her injured mother. Despite her wounds, her mother tried to reassure her, saying, "I'm fine, I'll manage. You need to go and save your sister. That queen is planning to sacrifice her to the dragon instead of you." Elodie broke the news to her mom that their dad was no longer alive. Without wasting time, she set off for the cave, knowing that the queen had already taken her sister there. Inside the cave, the queen had begun her twisted ritual. She cut her hand in Elodie's sister's hand, mixing their blood and tossing it into the pit below. The dragon emerged and snatched Elodie's sister. At this point, the queen is basically a villain auditioning for a horror movie role. She's way too good at this. Elodie arrived at the cave just in time, but no one knew she was there. Before confronting the dragon, she prepared herself. She collected glowing insects for light, grabbed her father's sword, and picked up some weapons from the cave that could help her fight the dragon. Meanwhile, the dragon had Elodie's sister, but hadn't harmed her yet. The dragon was sitting with its broken eggs, grieving. "Your people killed my children," it told Elodie's sister. "Now, I'll kill Elodie and make them suffer the way I've suffered. I know she'll come for you, and I'll enjoy killing her even more than I would enjoy killing you." This dragon has mastered the art of holding grudges. It's on a revenge mission with a flair for drama. Elodie decided to distract the dragon. She created noise deeper in the cave, making the dragon leave her sister to investigate. While the dragon was away, Elodie hurried to free her sister. But before they could escape, the dragon returned, furious. "You were lied to," Elodie shouted at the dragon. "We were told you attacked the kingdom, but the truth is, they killed your children first." The dragon wasn't having it. "It doesn't matter. If they are your ancestors, I'll take my revenge through you," it growled. Elodie countered, "No, we're not their children. We've been tricked too." But before she could explain further, the dragon attacked, spewing fire. Elodie turned to dodge, but she slipped and fell into the water. In pain but still determined, she faced the dragon again. The dragon slashed her with its claws, leaving her injured. Realizing she needed to fight back, Elodie stabbed the dragon in the eye with her sword. Props to Elodie for finally landing a solid hit. Clearly, she's not just running anymore. The dragon roared in pain, its anger boiling over. It threw Elodie aside and unleashed another blast of fire. But this time, the fire hit the rocks around the cave, ricocheting back onto the dragon. The dragon was burned badly and visibly weakened. Elodie seized the moment. "Look at the wound on my hand," she shouted. "They cut us and mixed their blood with ours to make it royal blood. We aren't their children. While you've been punishing innocent girls like us, they're sitting in their palace, living in peace." She continued, "Just like they killed your children. You're doing the same to us. You're no better than them." Elodie coming in hot with the truth bombs. This dragon needs some serious self-reflection after this. After learning the truth, the dragon became very sad. She looked at Elodie and said, "My punishment should be death. Kill me now." Oh great, now the dragon's trying to be the main character in a tragedy. But Elodie shook her head. "I won't kill you," she said. Instead, she took out the glowing insects she had collected earlier and placed them on the dragon's burns. Slowly, the dragon's wounds began to heal. With her strength restored, the dragon and Elodie decided it was time to confront the real villains, the prince and the queen. They were the ones who had tricked Elodie into marrying the prince, only to toss her into the dragon's cave as a sacrifice. Meanwhile, the prince was back to his old tricks, preparing to deceive yet another girl by luring her with marriage promises. Apparently, being a royal didn't come with lessons in originality. Elodie stormed into the kingdom, exposing the prince's lies to the girl. "Run before they do to you what they did to me," she warned. Then Elodie stood before the gathered crowd and declared, "If you value your lives, leave now." The queen wasn't fazed. With a smug look, she scoffed, "Oh, little girl, you think just because you survived the dragon, you can scare us? What could you possibly do to us alone?" Elodie smirked. "Who said I was alone?" Right on cue, the dragon appeared in the sky, swooping down over the palace. The massive creature unleashed her fury, reducing the royal palace and the royal family to ashes. The queen learned the hard way that mocking a girl with a pet dragon is a terrible life choice. With her revenge complete, Elodie, her sister, and their mother gathered what was left of the kingdom's treasure and prepared to return home. Before they left, Elodie turned to her mother and said, "I know you'll take the treasure as compensation for Dad, and I'm sure you'll manage this kingdom better than anyone else could." Elodie, casually handing over an entire kingdom like it's a parting gift. Her mom beamed with pride, and together they made their way back to their own kingdom. Flying alongside them was a dragon, who had now become Elodie's loyal companion. And with that, the story came to an end.
Let me tell you about a girl named Elodie. Thought she found love, but it was all a parody. Prince Henry, yeah, he played the part, but behind that smile was a cold, dark heart. From Lord Favorite's land to Arya's throne, Elodie traveled, dreams overblown. A wedding day turned into a trap, thrown to a dragon, no time to nap. But Elodie ain't no damsel in distress. She faced that beast, ready to impress. Glowing silk words light in her way, found the truth in the chamber, names in dismay. Elodie fights, she won't be denied, against the dragon and the royal lies. With courage and might, she breaks against the dragon and the royal lies. With courage and might, she breaks the chains. A true warrior, her spirit remains. Sailing home with glory by her side, Lady Bitter proud watching the tide. Elodie's legend, a tale to tell of a damsel who rose and gave them hell. Elodie fights, she won't be denied, against the dragon and the royal lies. With courage and might, she breaks the chains. A true warrior, her spirit remains.